to the woman who's going places, and to the clueless husband footing the bill while I take her to the top. The glass of Cabernet in my hand didn't shatter. That's important. That's the difference between instinct and control. I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw a punch, didn't yell, didn't even blink. I just looked at Craig. Gelled hair, smug smirk, a man who thought cufflinks meant power, and then at her. And there it was, not shock, not embarrassment, not denial, a smile. She didn't flinch, didn't scold him, didn't even pretend to be surprised. She looked at him like a woman watching her lapdog perform a cute trick. She laughed along with the others. That laugh, not the one I used to hear at 2 a.m. on the couch watching reruns. No, this one was curated, professionally pitched, the one she saved for networking events and award ceremonies, the one she used when she wanted to be seen. They laughed at me, every one of them, clients, colleagues, junior staff, her assistant, for God's sake. That kid used to call me Mr. Price with respect. Now he raised his glass like it was a roast, and I was the punchline. I didn't finish my drink. I didn't say goodbye. I just placed the wine glass on the edge of the table, no clink, no fanfare, and walked out of the rooftop bar into the November chill. The doorman barely noticed me leave. That's the thing about being the husband in these rooms. You're not actually in them. You're just tolerated, like the wallpaper or the catering. It wasn't what Craig said that lit the match. It was that she let him. If you're still listening, do us both a favor. Hit that subscribe button. More than 97% of you hear stories like this and don't. But this story, this one lit a fire under my team like nothing else ever has. Your support helps keep that fire going. I took the long way home, walked 3 blocks past our parking garage, let the cold cut through the starch of my shirt. Thought about how many years I'd sat in the background, nodding politely while she climbed ladders I built, shaking hands with people I introduced her to. I paid for her MBA, co-signed the lease on her first office. I was the one who told her to go after tech clients because they scale. Her firm's biggest account, that came from a fishing trip I took 5 years ago with a man who owed me a favor, a man she never even met until I walked her into the meeting. And now I was the clueless husband. Back at the apartment, the lights were off. She'd be staying out late. Celebration, I imagined. Maybe Craig would be there. Maybe not. Maybe that line about taking her to the top was just a metaphor. Or maybe it wasn't. Didn't matter. What mattered was that for the first time in years, I wasn't going to ask, wasn't going to play the part of supportive spouse, wasn't going to smile through another meeting or pour another glass of wine for a guest who thought I was the valet. When I got inside, I walked straight past the kitchen and into the study, the one room she never cared about. Too dark, too bookish. That's where I kept the files, the backups, the client histories, and most importantly, the contracts, the one I drafted myself 2 years ago, the one with my name on the ownership clause, the one that secured a certain tech client as my account, not hers, not the firm's, mine. I opened the drawer and took it out. There it was, signed, scanned, time-stamped. It wasn't buried, wasn't locked away, just waiting. I sat at the desk and emailed one line to the client contact. Still open to a chat this weekend? The reply came before I stood up. Always, you name the place. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was acknowledgement, the kind that doesn't need applause or witnesses. Just action, clean, surgical. She thought she was building a future. What she never understood was she was renting it from me. Saturday morning, while she was meeting a client for brunch, code for Craig if we're being honest, I was already an hour outside the city, seated across from a man who could flip the firm's entire forecast with a single call. Ellis Green, you won't find his name on any website, doesn't do press, doesn't attend launch parties, and wouldn't be caught dead at one of those rooftop laugh fests where half the people are pretending not to know they're being lied to. Ellis doesn't tolerate theater. That's why I liked him, and why I trusted him. We met at a private clubhouse he's owned for years, the kind with mahogany walls, no TVs, and coffee so strong it could cut glass. We didn't do pleasantries. We didn't have to. He slid the folder across the table before I even spoke. "Still want out?" he asked, raising a brow. I flipped through the pages. Updated valuations. Contracts with escape clauses already annotated, even a drafted press release. Neutral, surgical, clean. I could have walked away that moment, made it look like a standard partner shuffle. But that wasn't the play anymore. Yes, I said, closing the folder, but not quietly. He didn't flinch, didn't ask why, just leaned back and let out a slow exhale, half smiling. Then Monday it is. Ellis had seen it all. Firms rise, implode, merge, split, rot from the inside like a polished apple with a worm under the skin. He didn't need details. He knew something had shifted. He also knew I wasn't the type to bark without biting. If I was moving my pieces, it meant I'd already gamed out the board 10 steps ahead. Back in the city, the weekend played out like a parody of itself. She came home Saturday evening smelling like a hotel soap sampler with a shopping bag she claimed was a client thank you gift. Craig's initials were literally on the receipt taped to the box. Bold move, I'll give her that. She poured herself a glass of wine and scrolled through her phone, fake laughing at whatever filtered fantasy her group chat was serving. You working late Monday? She asked like it was casual. Yeah, big call with the client. She didn't even blink. Good. I'll be at the founder's mixer. Craig thinks the new investor might come. Sounds strategic, she winked. It's all part of the game, babe. I smiled, thin and dry. Sure is. She didn't ask which client, not surprising. She never knew where the real power was. She spent so much time performing success, she forgot to check who owned the stage. That's the thing with people like her. They confuse applause with ownership. But applause fades. Contracts don't. Sunday, I drafted the final memo to Ellis. It included the trigger clause on the joint venture agreement, a little-known paragraph she never read when I helped revise it for submission. It gave me veto authority over client transitions if a conflict of interest arose, like, say, sleeping with someone who managed the firm's finances. It didn't accuse her of anything directly, just cited ethical ambiguity and invoked the right to withdraw participation effective immediately. Ellis would do the rest. I also prepared a printout, a small thing, a gift of sorts, a screen-captured timestamp from the party, her laughing, Craig mid-toast, and me in the background walking out, a moment they thought was nothing. That's what I love most about it. They didn't even notice. But Monday, they'd notice everything. While she slept off her weekend ego trip, I was already packed for war, not the kind with screaming or betrayal confessions. No, I'd leave the soap opera stuff to them. Mine would be quieter, colder, contractual. She walked in like she'd just been voted most charming at a charity gala, hair still curled from the night before, heels in one hand, excuses in the other. She dropped her coat on the back of the chair like it was any normal Saturday morning, like her business partner hadn't just publicly emasculated me 48 hours ago. I half expected a follow-up punchline. Maybe she'd offer to frame a picture from the party. Instead, she opened the fridge, pulled out the good wine, and said it with a shrug. Craig's just loud when he drinks. That was it. No apology, no discomfort, not even a fake concern about how I might have taken it. Just a lazy justification wrapped in a chuckle, like we were both in on some long-running sitcom gag, and last night's punchline had landed a little rough. I wondered briefly if she actually believed her own performance, or if she was just that far gone. I didn't correct her. I didn't tell her Craig wasn't just loud. He was calculated. I didn't tell her I wasn't confused or wounded. And I sure as hell didn't tell her I'd spent the morning with the man who was about to financially gut the firm from the inside. I said, I'll be working late Monday. Big call with the client. She raised her glass without turning around. Don't stay too late. We've got that fundraiser next week, remember? Craig wants us both there. Of course. She didn't ask which client. She never asked. That was the most revealing part. She hadn't known my roster in years. I'd stopped updating her once I realized she didn't listen. She just waited for names she could name drop. And the big one, the one that held the most leverage in the firm, she never bothered to learn who controlled it, because I didn't talk about it. I just handled it. She stood by the window, wine in one hand, phone in the other, laughing at something her screen whispered. I sat on the couch across the room, watching her silhouette, wondering if she even remembered the man she married, the one who pulled double shifts when she was getting her MBA, the one who paid off her student loans when the first wave of commissions came in, the one who passed her that client at the tech retreat because she needed a win. That man had been traded in somewhere between promotion announcements and performative LinkedIn posts. I spent the rest of the weekend in the study, doors closed, curtains drawn, quiet. I drafted final communications, one to legal, one to Ellis, and one, ironically, to the firm's PR lead. I knew she'd see it eventually. Might as well make it readable. I sorted through contracts, highlighted key clauses, reviewed dates, noted inconsistencies in her expense reimbursements, little anomalies I'd overlooked for too long, spa treatments listed as client entertainment, plane tickets marked as strategy sessions. One of them was to the exact city Craig had mentioned during that disastrous toast. It wasn't jealousy, not anymore. It was insult, not just to me, but to my intelligence. She thought I didn't see it because I wasn't dramatic, because I didn't sniff her phone or install spyware or confront her crying on the kitchen floor. She thought quiet meant clueless. She didn't understand that men like me don't yell when we're betrayed. We prepare, slowly, methodically, with clean lines and clear eyes. I scanned the old photograph on my desk, us at her firm's first open house, her in a borrowed suit, me behind the camera, out of frame, as always. I saved the image to the folder marked Final. She brought me a glass of water before bed. Routine. A gesture, not affection. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, sipping. "Just tired. Lot to do Monday." She kissed my forehead and patted down the hall in silk. That night I slept fine. Monday morning hit like a starter pistol. Except this time, I wasn't the one running. I was already at my desk by 6:30, sipping black coffee, watching the digital clock tick closer to impact. My calendar had one item, blocked in red, 9:00 a.m., execution. It wasn't labeled that way, of course. On paper, it looked like a routine transition call. But I knew better. This was the controlled detonation of everything she thought she controlled. I had just closed my laptop when I heard it. Fast footsteps, stilettos on tile. The door to my private office slammed open so hard it bounced. She was standing there, wild-eyed, pale, like a ghost that hadn't had time to finish dying. "They pulled out," she said breathlessly. "The client, your client, gone. Top contract, terminated. And they're saying you had something to do with it. What the hell is going on?" I didn't look surprised. I didn't even look up at first. I waited, let the silence stretch until it was tight enough to snap. Before I could speak, Craig barreled in behind her like a petulant toddler kicked out of a sandbox. "What the hell did you tell them?" he barked. "That's our deal. You can't just—" "I didn't tell them anything," I said, finally meeting their eyes. Calm, even, like I was explaining the weather. I pulled open the side drawer and set a folder on the desk. Nothing fancy, just the truth on paper. I signed the exit clause 2 months ago. It was pre-approved, scheduled, executed this morning at 8:59. You'd know that if you read the contract, the original one, the one with my name on it. Craig looked confused. She looked devastated. I went on almost gently. "The deal was never between your firm and the client. It was between me and the client. I let the firm manage operations, that's all. It was a courtesy." A long silence. "No, no," she stammered, stepping forward. That can't be. You didn't—" "When? Why would you—" "You toasted to my stupidity 3 nights ago," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I just finally agreed with you." She sank into the guest chair like her legs had forgotten how to perform their function. Craig hovered by the door, fists balled, still processing the fact that his big mouth hadn't just cost them a client, it had exposed their entire illusion. He tried to pivot. "We can renegotiate. There's still time. I'll call—" "You won't," I said flatly. "They've already signed a new service agreement with a different firm, mine." Her mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out. You started a firm?" I shrugged. "No, I restarted it, mine from before we married. I never dissolved the LLC, I just waited for a reason to wake it up." Craig finally caught on. His voice cracked. "You set this up. You planned this." "No," I corrected. "You set it up. I just documented everything and waited." I stood, picked up my coffee, walked past both of them. "You might want to check with compliance," I said casually. "The ethics office will be curious about that weekend in Scottsdale billed as client development." Her eyes widened. She remembered the receipt, the one she thought I never saw, the one she edited in PDF form like a freshman faking a term paper. I stepped into the hall and let the door swing shut behind me. Inside, the silence was louder than the confrontation. That's the moment it hit her. Her power wasn't real. It was borrowed. and I had just called in the loan. By noon, the firm's Slack channels had gone from GIFs and memes to full-on DEFCON 1. Threads were lighting up with names, acronyms, and "can we jump on a quick call" desperation. People were copying the managing partners on everything, CCing them on threads they had no business being in. Panic is never efficient. It's loud, flailing, and thoroughly human. Craig was the first to get dragged under. HR called him in just before lunch. The look on his face when he passed by the glass conference room was priceless. Somewhere between toddler caught stealing cookies and defendant realizing his lawyer just quit. He tried to make a joke to the receptionist on the way in. She didn't laugh. She hadn't been summoned yet. That was the worst part for her. Craig getting dragged before her, that shattered the fantasy. She always believed she had the inside track, that if it came to a crash, someone would airbag her to safety. But the silence from upstairs told a different story. The partners weren't circling wagons, they were calculating impact. I, on the other hand, was nowhere to be found. I'd resigned that morning. The notice was short, clinical, no drama, just a 2-line email and a 1-line legal attachment. No "thank you for the opportunity," no parting platitudes, just "effective immediately, I resign all active responsibilities. My transition has already been arranged, documents enclosed." While she was busy trying to find me, I was at a quiet co-working space across town, the one I'd reserved under a different name, the one where I met with an advisor from the board, someone I'd worked with before years ago on a charity audit, someone who owed me a favor, someone who now had a flash drive containing the kind of breadcrumbs that don't just get someone removed, they get someone blacklisted. I had receipts, literal ones, credit card logs she'd submitted as training expenses for junior staff dinners that never happened, a charge for a resort massage she'd tagged as post-client debrief, a parking stub from Craig's apartment garage billed to the firm 3 times under different project codes, screenshots. I had those too, from Slack, from email, from her phone actually, back when we still trusted each other and she asked me to back it up to my cloud. I did, and forgot to remove access. She never changed the password. That was on her. Voicemails? There were 2 that mattered. One from Craig, left after midnight, half drunk, whispering, "We've got this firm by the throat, babe." And another from her 2 months earlier, muttering, "If it all goes down, I'll say he knew. He always knew." I didn't use these for court. I used them for the board, because courts want proof of violation, boards want proof of risk. And she was now the biggest liability the firm had. While the staff whispered, she tried to find me. I know because my former assistant texted, "She's been down here 3 times asking if you're on calls. She looks not well." She finally emailed me directly at 3:41 p.m. Subject, "Can we talk?" Message, "I think we both overreacted. Let's find a path forward. It doesn't have to be this way." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to the board liaison. The subject line I added, "Material acknowledgement of internal conflict." The collapse had begun, not with an explosion, but with a red flag raised quietly inside the highest office on the 32nd floor. By the time she realized the roof was on fire, the exit had already been sealed. From the outside, Wednesday morning. The boardroom smelled like new leather and old nerves. She arrived early, of course she did, wearing the power suit, the one with the soft gray lapels and discreet gold buttons that screamed poised authority without yelling it. Her walk was rehearsed, her smile calibrated, not too apologetic, not too smug. She greeted the assistant with faux warmth and offered coffee to the intern like she was everyone's favorite mentor, damage control in stilettos. But when she stepped into the room, something was off. There were 9 chairs around the oval table, only 8 people. The 9th, mine, sat empty, except for the folder resting neatly in front of it. She hesitated just a fraction of a second too long, then laughed like this was all some mildly inconvenient scheduling snafu. "Guess Daniel's not a morning person anymore," she said to no one in particular. No one laughed. The only response came from Chairwoman Ames, who glanced at the empty seat, then at her. "Let's begin." What followed wasn't a conversation. It was an unveiling. The folder I'd left wasn't just a stack of grievances. It was a narrative, a curated, time-stamped sequence of events that turned her glittering track record into a blueprint for self-destruction. A full forensic account audit prepared by a third-party firm I'd engaged the moment she expensed a hotel in Aspen as Continuing education. They traced every line item, every discrepancy. Craig's name came up 17 times. Then came the HR log, dates, internal complaints, passive-aggressive Slack messages from junior staff filed but never followed up on, whispers about favoritism. One former analyst had even noted strange billing patterns on joint projects. That analyst now worked for me. She skimmed the first few pages. Her mouth twitched. The board watched in silence, a gallery of unreadable expressions. Then came the letter. It wasn't hers. It was addressed to the board from me. A formal letter of recommendation, typed, signed, notarized, endorsing a candidate to succeed her role as lead partner on the now vacated account. Someone with no scandals, no conflicts of interest. Someone internal. Someone boring, reliable, and above all else, safe. She looked up from the page, stunned. Is there anything you'd like to disclose? The chairwoman Ames asked calmly, before this package moves to formal vote and public disclosure. She blinked. Disclose what? I mean, this is clearly some kind of coordinated smear. Coordinated, yes, Ames said. Smear? Not if it's true. The others didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their silence wasn't approval. It was strategy. She wasn't a partner anymore. She was a risk profile. And every one of them was deciding how close they were willing to stand when she went up in flames. She shifted tones, tried the vulnerable act next. I've given this firm everything, my nights, my weekends, my marriage. Your marriage isn't under review, Ames said flatly. Your judgment is. There it was, the shift, the smile faded, the mask cracked. For the first time in a long time, she didn't know how to perform her way out of it. Her hands were shaking slightly, betraying the polished exterior. The woman who once ran 6-hour pitch decks without notes now couldn't hold a page steady. I wasn't in the room, but I was everywhere in it, in every line of every report, in every clause of every contract she signed without reading, in every silence that followed her defense. She thought the board owed her something, loyalty, legacy, forgiveness. But boards don't operate on feelings. They operate on stability. And she had become the storm. By 3:17 p.m., the firm's website quietly updated its homepage. No flashy banners, no pop-ups, just a new post under news and announcements. We thank Mr. Carter for his years of quiet strategic leadership and foundational partnerships. His departure will leave a lasting mark on our legacy. We wish him continued success in his future endeavors. That was it. 2 sentences. Polished, impersonal, lethal. It went live just after the emergency board meeting ended. She wasn't mentioned, not even in passing. Not as a co-founder, not as a co-lead on the departing account, not even as remaining leadership. It was like she didn't exist. Her name wasn't forgotten. It was excluded. The photo that accompanied the post, a candid from a retreat 4 years ago. Me, seated with 3 partners, mid-laugh, holding a coffee mug. She wasn't in the frame. She never liked those retreats. Too rustic, she used to say. Funny how legacy ends up being built in the places you skip. By 4:00 p.m., LinkedIn had caught wind. My inbox pinged with congratulations from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Former interns, clients, one CFO who once turned down our proposal and now wanted to explore new synergies. I let them pile up. She, on the other hand, was unraveling in real time. That evening, the internal project dashboard updated. Her name vanished from the lead column on every major initiative. No warning, just gone. She was still technically with the firm, but her email signature suddenly had no title. Just her name and a phone number that now rang with the desperation of someone realizing the call was never going to come. She dialed me at 6:11 p.m. I watched it ring twice and silenced it. She texted after, "Can we please talk?" Then another, "You're being cruel." And finally, "I defended you. You don't know what they're saying about me." Oh, but I did. I knew exactly what they were saying, because now they were saying it to me. When someone's power collapses, their story changes. The same execs who toasted her 6 months ago were now whispering about her temperament and concerns that had been simmering for years. No one wanted to be associated with the name attached to scandal. They weren't protecting her anymore. They were insulating themselves. It wasn't about punishment, not really. It was about letting her feel it, the isolation, the sudden shift from relevance to omission, that gut punch of realizing you're no longer necessary. No press release, no interview, no quote. She was used to being celebrated. Now she was background noise. The firm didn't cancel her. They eclipsed her, subtracted her name without comment, without ceremony. I poured myself a drink that night, neat, no garnish. I sat by the window in my new place, the one she didn't know about, and watched the city lights blink like quiet witnesses. She tried again at 10:24 p.m. One more call, one more text. You were the only one who really knew me. Maybe. But I also knew when to stop answering. Thursday morning, 8:12 a.m. She swiped the firm card at her favorite cafe, the one that printed latte art hearts with a precision she used to say calmed her before battle. Declined. She stared at the screen like it was a personal attack. Tried again. Declined. Barista offered a pity smile and a soft, "It happens." But she was already pulling out the joint card. Declined. By the time she got to the car, she'd opened her mobile banking app and discovered what I'd spent months preparing. Nothing was in her name. Or rather, nothing that she thought was in her name still was. The business credit line, frozen. The personal spending account dissolved. The joint investment portfolio, split and allocated per Clause 17C, effective upon proof of spousal misrepresentation in matters of business entanglement. She hadn't read Clause 17C. Most people don't. It's buried beneath the third-party asset disclosures and NDAs that get passed between spouses when there's collaboration between entities, a fancy way of saying you and your spouse are in each other's business. She skimmed that NDA the way she skimmed everything boring. She liked fast contracts, fast pitches, fast wins. She signed it digitally while on a Zoom call with Craig last quarter. I know because the timestamp shows her typing "got it" in Slack 6 minutes later. The NDA was already processed and countersigned by my legal counsel. By 9:30, she was in her lawyer's office, high heels clicking like war drums down the hallway. He was already waiting. She didn't sit, just dropped her bag on the leather chair and snapped, "Why are my cards frozen?" He tapped a few keys, spun his monitor toward her. Clause 17C. What the hell is Clause 17C? The spousal misrepresentation clause from the restructuring paperwork. You authorized it in May. I didn't know what I was authorizing. Daniel said it was just cleanup stuff from the old LLC. It's in the signed acknowledgement, he said, spinning a printed page across the desk. Her name, her signature, her IP address. And there was a 5-day period for questions before activation. No objections were filed. She stared at it like it had been forged in blood. I want it reversed. It's not reversible. It's mine. No, he said quietly. It was shared. That's a legal distinction. And now it's separated. She tried another angle. You were my attorney? Why didn't you flag this? He didn't flinch. I advised you to review it. You said you were too busy and trusted your husband. That statement is in the client notes. That's the thing about trust. Once you weaponize it, you stop being a victim of betrayal. You become its architect. Back at her office, she logged into the project portal. The tab for upcoming disbursements was gone. She tried to message HR. Her account returned a permission error. She tried to call me again, straight to voicemail. She texted Craig. He didn't reply either. She was learning now, in slow motion horror, the difference between having access and having ownership. Her wealth wasn't frozen. It had simply moved, past her, around her, without her. By 5 p.m., she had one asset left under her name, a lease. Not the office, not the condo, just a leased luxury SUV with balloon payments due in 60 days. She used to call the car an extension of her brand. Now it was the only thing left that said her name on the paperwork, and even it came with a ticking clock. 3 weeks later, a subtle shift rippled through the city's executive circles. Not loud, not headline-worthy, just a new player quietly added to a short list of firms that mattered. A soft launch site went live. No press release, just a clean landing page with a navy blue background, understated serif font, and a one-line mission statement. We don't sell stories. We build results. Scroll down, and there I was. Founder. My full name, my record, no puffed-up accolades, just metrics, case studies, and one line that made her jaw tighten when she saw it. Former lead strategist behind, client name redacted, responsible for tenfold revenue expansion in under 4 years. She had used that same client in 3 different keynotes, claimed it as a cornerstone of her leadership era. She once called it the crown jewel of our growth. And now the jewel was wearing a new crown, one with my name etched on the inside. The industry buzzed. Quietly but persistently, recruiters started reaching out. 2 board members from her former firm scheduled intro calls just to hear more. My calendar filled itself. She tried to stay silent. She tried to outlast it, but it gnawed at her. And then it happened. She broke. It came on a Tuesday afternoon. I saw the notification on my phone while reviewing staffing projections, LinkedIn message request. From her, the first message was short. You used me. No greeting, no punctuation, just a fragment, but heavy. Condensed bitterness in a 4-word accusation. I stared at it for a moment, then typed my reply. You made a toast, I made a move. I didn't wait for a reply. There wouldn't be one. That wasn't a conversation, it was a conclusion. 10 minutes later, her account vanished. Not deactivated, deleted. Public portfolio, gone. Network endorsements, erased. Articles she'd written about strategic resilience and the emotional intelligence of leadership, 404. She disappeared herself. Because that's the thing about careers built on showmanship. They collapse without applause. And her applause had stopped. She used to curate posts with timestamps down to the minute for peak engagement. She once told me, timing is everything. She was right. She toasted at the wrong time, to the wrong crowd, and the wrong man heard her. What she never grasped is that I wasn't her obstacle. I was her infrastructure. She didn't just betray a husband, she dismantled her foundation. And once I stepped out, it wasn't sabotage, it was structural failure. By Friday, I was fielding offers. She was fielding silence. It came on a Wednesday, late morning, the kind of day where the air felt thin and overly bright, like the weather had the decency to stay neutral while everything else bled. The courier didn't say a word, just handed her the padded envelope and left. No signature required, no sender's name. But she knew. She closed the office door she no longer technically had authority over, sat at her desk, the one HR hadn't reassigned yet, and peeled back the seal with trembling fingers. Inside, wrapped in matte paper, was a single photograph. It wasn't glossy, nothing dramatic, just a clean, candid frame. That night, the party. Craig mid-toast, his mouth frozen in that cocky O shape, one hand raised in smug salute. Her beside him, champagne flute aloft, eyes alight, laughing, mouth open, shoulders relaxed, head tilted back in pure, unguarded joy. And just behind them, off to the left, near the edge of the frame, partially blocked by a waiter passing hors d'oeuvres, me, not looking at the camera, not clapping, not laughing, walking away. Taped neatly to the back of the photo was a yellow post-it, one line in my handwriting. Thanks for the spotlight, I used it well. No name, no accusation, no fury, just the artifact of a moment she thought was harmless. A fleeting joke for a crowd already drunk and performative. And the reminder that I had seen everything and remembered everything. She didn't move for a long time. No tears, not at first. Just stillness, the kind that only comes when the mind's loop runs out of denial and hits the cold wall of recognition. She wasn't just betrayed, she was outmaneuvered. She thought she was the main act, the keynote, the rising star with a brand and a curated success story, but it had been my light she was standing in, and when I stepped out of frame, the shadows came. She looked at the photo again, watched her own expression, open, joyful, victorious, and saw what it really was. Not a woman basking in triumph, but a woman unaware that the floor beneath her had just given way. She had made a toast, a grand, sparkly, ego-drunk moment designed for chuckles and LinkedIn storytelling. But what she never understood is that applause is not currency. Applause fades. Infrastructure lasts. That night wasn't the beginning of her celebration. It was the end of her illusion. She had believed the power was in the microphone, the stage, the crowd. She never thought to check who wired the spotlight, who installed the floorboards, who signed the event invoice. She held the photo for hours, not speaking, not moving, not blinking, because now, finally, she understood. It wasn't just a toast, it was her last applause, and it had already been archived.